You didn't come into a narcissist's life by chance. It wasn't a mistake nor bad luck. You were there for a reason, even if it hurts to admit it. And yes, I know. After everything you went through, it's hard even to hear it. Constant manipulation, gaslighting. That exhaustion that's not just physical, it's in your soul. You gave everything, time, love, patience. You even prayed for the relationship, and still it was never enough. It was never sufficient. They distorted you, twisted what you said, used your kindness as a tool, and then pointed at you as the problem while they acted like the victims. And in the middle of all that, you asked yourself the same question over and over again, in silence. God, why did you let me go through this? Here comes the part nobody told you. You weren't put in that storm to sink, but to learn how to walk on it. Or you weren't there to be broken. You were there to detach from what you no longer were. Because yes, narcissists are hurt people who hurt others. They build themselves a suit of armor out of inflated ego and false confidence. But inside, everything is fragile. And even so, God in His mercy keeps trying to reach them, and you know how He does it sometimes. Through someone like you, someone with light, with truth, with something they no longer recognize in themselves. You were a kind of last chance. You weren't just any partner. That wasn't just a toxic relationship. It was a battlefield, a test, real-time spiritual training, a brutal mirror where you saw things about yourself that no one else had managed to show you. But be careful, this is key. You weren't there to get stuck. You were there to open your eyes, to stay true, to grow. And to grow, and if necessary, to leave without looking back. You were never called to tolerate manipulation. You were called to rise above it. And when you truly understand this, you'll realize something uncomfortable but powerful. That stage didn't destroy you, it built you. Now let's go to point 1. God wanted them to see Him through you. You were the light in their chaos, of something they could no longer hold inside, the calm in the midst of their pride. Did they recognize it? No. Did they thank you for it? Neither. Did they change? Even less so, but that doesn't mean they didn't feel it. Something inside them shifted, even if they won't admit it. People who are comfortable in darkness dislike the light because it makes them uneasy. And God doesn't always show up with spectacular signs. Sometimes He shows up in the form of a person, as a presence, as energy. And that presence was you. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. So why did it seem like they wanted to dim your light all the time? Because the light reveals. And those who live for appearances and control can't stand being exposed. The way you were confronted them, your patience threw them off. Your consistency irritated them. And your faith hit them where it hurts the most. But listen closely. You weren't the problem. You were the evidence. They didn't reject you for being too much. They rejected you because what you carried inside was impossible for them to ignore. They made fun of what you believed in. They minimized your way of seeing life. They asked you to tone it down, not to exaggerate, to let it go. Of course, it was more comfortable to silence you than to face what you awakened. And if you're still wondering, yes, you mattered. You were probably the closest they've come to the truth in a long time. But what they did with that was never your responsibility. Your job wasn't to open their eyes. It was to show the light. Don't let their blindness make you doubt who you are. You weren't just someone else in their story. You were part of a much bigger plan. And now it's time to truly understand that. The role was never to change them. It was to transform yourself. And what if that rejection that marked you wasn't because you were too much, but because the light you carried started to reveal exactly what they wanted to keep hidden? Write it down if you feel it. Lord, I'm not going to let them put out my light. Because many times darkness doesn't just react, it defends itself. And it does so even more forcefully when it detects a light it can't control. Let's move on to point 2. God had to bring something out of you using what they did. Yes, what you went through was wrong. There's no nice way to say it. But even so, God used it. Because the narcissist didn't just show their dark side, they also exposed yours. They brought to the surface things that had been hidden for years. Fear of rejection, need for approval, that habit of over-explaining yourself, as if you had to justify your existence, and that dangerous idea that loving means staying silent, so as not to create conflict. But no, you weren't there to be punished. You were there to be cleansed. You thought you were surviving that person, but in reality, you were facing patterns that you had carried inside for a long time. Because let's be clear, that person didn't create your insecurities, they just exposed them. And when something comes to light, you can finally be healed. That relationship put you face to face with an uncomfortable truth. You kept trying to please everyone. You kept giving more than you had. You kept trying to be enough for someone who honestly was never going to be satisfied. And in the middle of that chaos, there was a quieter voice, but a more real one. You don't need their approval. You need mine. You asked for healing, and they showed you where it hurt. You asked for strength, and they put you in a situation that made it clear how fragile your foundation was. It's not a coincidence. Sometimes when you ask to grow, what comes is not peace. It's a storm that shakes everything that's holding you back. They thought they were breaking you. God was setting you free. Letting go of the need to be validated, of earning love, of carrying guilt that wasn't even yours, of calling loyalty what was really attachment to pain, of disguising abuse as sacrifice. He used their chaos to uproot what had you trapped, not to shame you, to set you free, because there are things that only come out when they hurt, and if they don't come out, they stay. This wasn't just a toxic relationship, it was a detox. And yes, you came out hurt, but you also came out cleaner. Because what didn't come from God couldn't stay with you. That's why there was fire, not to destroy you, but to refine you. And if what hurt you the most was exactly what ended up breaking chains you've been dragging for years, write it down. Lord, heal what was exposed in me, because that's where freedom begins. When pain stops being just pain and becomes a revelation. Let's move on to point 3. You weren't just another person in their life. You were their last warning. Yes, it sounds harsh, but listen carefully. You weren't their toy or their project, nor their emotional punching bag. You were an opportunity, the last one. You came with love. You prayed for them. You endured more than anyone else would have. You interceded even when they had no idea what you were doing for their soul. And what did they do? They mocked, they downplayed it, they took your patience for weakness, as if being good was the same as being easy to manipulate. But they didn't just reject you, they rejected what you carried inside. And this isn't new. Every time someone was about to cross a line, there was always a warning first. Before the flood, there was Noah. Before Nineveh fell, Jonah appeared. Before the fall of Jerusalem, warning after warning came, and the same thing always happened. They laughed, they ignored the warnings, until it stopped being funny. That was you, a warning in human form, a living chance, one last attempt at grace before the consequences arrived, an echo from heaven, right before the silence. But listen closely. Don't carry guilt that isn't yours. What they did belongs to them. Their response is not your responsibility. Your role was never to replace God. It was to reflect Him. You weren't there to save them. You were there to point to the one who can. If they ignored that, it's not on you. It's written. If you warn them and they don't listen, they bear the responsibility for their decision. But you are free. So let go. Let go of the weight. Let go of the outcome. And above all, let go of that silent lie. It haunts you. If you had loved better, they would have changed. No, it wasn't a lack of love. In fact, you stayed longer than you should have. You gave more than was healthy. You spoke truths they didn't want to hear, and that didn't go unnoticed. Heaven saw it all. So stop crying over what didn't change and start recognizing what you did right. You were obedient, and that matters more than you think. Their reaction doesn't erase your integrity. Their rejection doesn't cancel your purpose. You weren't just another person in their life. You were the boundary they didn't want to respect. And if you've been carrying a guilt that was never yours, it's time to let it go. Lord, today I let go of what doesn't belong to me. Because there are truths that are hard to accept, and this is one of them. You can love the right way. And even so, the other person doesn't change. Now let's move on to point 4. God had to teach you something that changes everything. To love without losing yourself. Because there's a very fine line between holding someone up in prayer and carrying them as if they were your responsibility. And the narcissist erased that line without you even realizing it. He sold you the idea that loving meant sacrificing yourself, that being good meant staying silent, that forgiving meant putting up with it, that being humble meant letting people walk all over you. And for a while you bought it. You thought that if you were more patient, he would change, that if you stayed quiet enough, there would be peace, that if you forgave one more time, maybe this time it would really be different. But no. And here is the truth you had to learn the hard way. Real love doesn't erase you. God had to let you go through that fire to teach you this once and for all. Love without truth. Love without truth. Love and truth without limits is not wisdom. Look at the clearest example. He loved deeply, but he didn't let just anyone invade his life. He stepped aside when he needed to, responded to everything, and didn't trust just anyone for no reason, and set boundaries. To love is not to diminish yourself so the other person doesn't feel uncomfortable or to be on edge.
Pequeño para evitar conflictos.
Love without truth is accepting empty apologies on repeat, as if they were worthless coins. God had to teach you something that you can no longer ignore. Loving someone doesn't mean losing yourself. You were created with identity, with a voice, with peace. And when you allow someone to erase that, you're not reflecting love, you're reflecting fear. This wasn't about making you tougher, it was about bringing you into alignment. Yes, God is love, but He's also fire. You weren't there to become the place where others clean their wounds while breaking you. You were there to learn how to stand firm without becoming cold, to tell the truth without needing to shout, to leave without feeling guilty. And if it hurts so much, it's because your heart was expanding, learning to hold love, but also boundaries. And now that you understand it, you're no longer just someone who survived. You're someone who knows, and that's a whole different league. Because true maturity begins when you stop confusing love with disappearing. Let's go to point 5. God used all of that to wake you up. What if the pain wasn't the end, but the push? What if the rejection was exactly the fire you needed to level up? Because while you were trying to fix them, God was working on something much more important. You.
Oraste como nunca. Clamaste con una intensidad que ni sabías que tenías.
You got into the Word, you asked, you listened, you fasted, and in the middle of that desperation, you found God on a much deeper level. You discovered something unexpected. You weren't as weak as you thought. There was strength in you, but it was asleep. There was discernment, but you hadn't used it. There was authority, but you hadn't exercised it. And all of that was activated in the fire, because God didn't waste that relationship. He used it. He used it to awaken the fighter, the worshiper, the watcher, and the one who no longer accepts things blindly. You stopped fighting against people and started to understand what was really happening. Did it become spiritual? Your prayers changed. Your focus changed. You started to break patterns that didn't even start with you. You started to intercede for others, while you yourself were coming out of the chaos. The enemy thought he was breaking you, but he was only helping build you. That's the twist. You came out with fire in you, with a different sensitivity, with a compassion that only someone who's been through it can understand. You came out with a voice, with clarity, with vision. You're not just better anymore. You're aligned. You're not just free anymore. You're dangerous to everything that used to dominate you. Your tears are no longer the same. Now they carry weight. The way you connect with God is no longer the same. Now it makes an impact. So stop lamenting the battle. It didn't happen to destroy you. It happened to transform you. The version you are today was born right in the place where they tried to put out your light. And you didn't just survive. You came out refined. Lord, finish awakening in me what you started. Let's move on to point 6. It was never your job to fix them. Never. Not before. Not now. Not after either. That burden you carry, that voice that tells you, maybe if I had done something differently, doesn't come from God. It comes from misplaced guilt. You were never their savior. And here's something uncomfortable. You never will be. Because it's not your responsibility. The problem is that compassion, when it's distorted, becomes a prison. You start to believe that it's your duty to stay, that if they sink, it's your fault, that you are their last chance. It sounds noble, but it's manipulation, disguised as purpose. God doesn't need you to rescue anyone. He needs you to represent him, and then let go. He didn't force those with him to change. He didn't chase after those who didn't want to listen. He didn't wear himself out trying to convince those who only wanted to argue. So why? Because you do. Leaving isn't giving up. Sometimes leaving is the most obedient thing you can do. Because God doesn't reward exhaustion. He rewards obedience. And sometimes obedience is letting someone hit rock bottom without continuing to cushion their fall. You did your part. You sowed, you spoke, you loved, you endured, but they chose to harden their hearts. That's not your burden. You're not a mini version of the Savior. You don't have that power, but you do have a responsibility. Listen for when it's time to leave. And when it is, leave. Act without guilt, without unnecessary explanations, without hesitation. Because staying when you already know you should leave isn't love. It's disobedience. Your presence is valuable, but it's not meant to be worn down by someone who doesn't honor it. Your purpose is too great to be trapped by someone else's resistance. Let go of that pressure. God didn't ask you to carry a cross that has already been carried. And sometimes the hardest thing isn't to fight, it's to leave. Point 7, period.
No era solo contigo, ni
First person.
era algo más grande, mucho más. Tú creías que estabas en una relación,
But actually, you were caught in a pattern A cycle that has been repeating for a long time. Control, manipulation, and emotional abuse, uncomfortable silence, all disguised as normal. The one who didn't fit in, the one who started to question, the one who decided not to keep playing that game. It didn't start with you, but it can end with you. That's why it was so heavy. That's why it hurt so much. Because you weren't just facing a person, you were facing a system. Every time you said no, you broke something. Every time you chose the truth, you shifted structures. Every time you chose your peace, you broke a chain. You weren't dramatic, you were disruptive. And that makes people uncomfortable. Your process doesn't end with you. It's going to impact others, people you don't even know, future relationships, even generations. Your healing changes stories. Your clarity prevents repetitions. Your courage opens paths. God used you as the first piece so that everything else can start to fall into place. This wasn't just about getting away from a toxic person. It was about ending an entire pattern. You were the interruption, and now it's time to build something different, with boundaries, with truth, with intention. The cycle was broken, and you are the proof. Lord, it ends with me. Point 8. Now your story is no longer just yours, because there is someone right now going through exactly what you went through. Confused, doubting himself, thinking that maybe he is the problem, feeling like he has to choose between love and not losing himself. And that's where you come in. Your story becomes your testimony. Don't hide what you healed. Don't cover up what was so hard for you to get through. Because what you live through in silence might be exactly what sets someone else free. You don't need to be perfect, just honest. Say, yes, it happened to me. Yes, I stayed longer than I should have. Yes, I got lost, but I also made it out. And that has power. Because God doesn't waste pain. He transforms it. He turns it into purpose, into direction, into a message. You're no longer just surviving. You're speaking. And someone needs to hear that. I want you to be honest with yourself right now. How many times did you betray yourself just to not lose someone? How many times did you stay silent when inside you were screaming that something wasn't right? How many times did you doubt yourself just because someone else didn't know how to appreciate you? And even so, here you are.
Después de todo eso, sigues buscando respuestas, sigues intentando entender, sigues queriendo hacerlo mejor. Eso no es debilidad. Eso es un corazón que se negó a volverse frío.
So bring it into awareness. Make it real. Listen to everything he says. If you've made it this far, it's because a part of you already knows it. So bring it into awareness. Make it real. Write this in the comments, even if your chest trembles. Today I stop betraying myself so others will stay. Because the day you stop betraying yourself is the day everything starts to fall into place. Someone needs to understand that it's not normal to lose yourself trying to love. Staying silent to keep fake peace isn't healthy. That it's not spiritual to justify what is clearly wrong. And now you carry that message. Not as a victim, as someone who understands, who sees clearly, who knows how to identify what used to confuse him. You don't need a platform, just availability. People will show up, and when they do, you will recognize it. Because they speak like you used to speak, they feel like you used to feel, and then you'll be able to say, I was there. And that changes everything. Your story is now a key. Lord, use what I have lived through to set others free. And we'll close with this. What they tried to use to drain you, God used to set you apart. You thought it was going to break you, but it defined you. You thought it was burying you, but it was shaping you. Nothing was in vain. That's where it left its mark on you. With clarity, with fire, with courage, with truth. You don't come out of something like that the same. You come out different, sharper, more aware, stronger. Now you know what love looks like. That's why you don't fall the same way again. Now you recognize manipulation. And because of that, you can protect others. Now you know who you are, and that's not up for negotiation anymore. The narcissist didn't win. Neither did what they tried to do to you. God won. And he didn't just get you out of there so you could breathe. He got you out to send you. This isn't the end. It's the beginning of something much bigger. So lift your head up. You went through the fire, and you weren't consumed. You learned to love with wisdom, to speak with intention, to leave without guilt, and now you walk differently, with authority. You didn't just leave a story behind, you completed a stage, and heaven recorded it. Welcome to what's next. Healing, power, freedom. You didn't enter that story to stay. You entered to come out transformed. And what God does with someone who goes through the fire and doesn't give up can have a much greater impact than you can imagine today.